It was 3:17 a.m. in Istanbul. The kind of hour where silence becomes its own kind of noise, thick, restless, haunting. The streets were quiet, the air was still, and inside one modern apartment tucked away from the paparazzi's lens, Can Yaman stood barefoot on the cold marble floor, staring at his front door like it might somehow open itself. He wasn't expecting anyone. Not tonight. Not ever, really. His phone was silent. His evening had been like most others lately, lonely, uneventful, almost hollow. Yet, something had shifted in the air. A feeling. A pull. Something that made his chest tighten before he even looked through the peephole. She was there. Demet Özdemir. The woman he hadn't spoken to in over a year. The woman whose name he still couldn't say out loud without something inside of him breaking a little. She wasn't moving. She wasn't knocking anymore. She was just standing there. A pale blue hoodie covered her hair, her arms were folded tightly over her chest, and even through the thick oak door, he could almost feel the weight she carried in that moment. She had been standing outside for hours. Doing nothing. Saying nothing. Just waiting. Waiting for him. And he had done nothing. He backed away from the door, running a shaky hand through his hair. His heart pounded, echoing in his ears. He leaned against the wall, his eyes closed, trying to find the courage to do what he hadn't been able to do for so long. To face her. To speak. To feel. But instead, he stood there in silence. Because silence had become his shield. But to understand that night, we need to go back, to a time when silence was the last thing between them. To a time when they couldn't stop talking, laughing, whispering dreams between takes on set, when everything felt electric, and nothing seemed impossible. Can Yaman and Demet Özdemir were the couple everyone wanted to believe in. They had met as co-stars, but even before the cameras rolled, there was something there, something more than chemistry, more than timing. It was a gravitational pull. Their series, Erkenci Kus, had captured hearts across the world. But what the audience didn't see was the connection blossoming between them after the cameras stopped rolling. The late-night script readings that turned into long talks about life. The lingering touches between takes. The quiet glances that said far more than any scripted line. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was real. Raw. Messy. Intoxicating. And maybe that's why it didn't survive. Because in a world of schedules, managers, expectations, and cameras, real love often becomes the first casualty. There was no dramatic breakup. No scandal. Just distance. Just exhaustion. Just too many maybe laters that turned into too late. They slipped away from each other slowly. Until all that remained was the silence. But that silence had a cost. For Demet, it was sleepless nights. It was laughter that didn't feel whole. It was seeing his face on magazine covers and pretending it didn't sting. It was pretending she had moved on, when every song, every place, every memory whispered his name. And then one night, without makeup, without a plan, she found herself driving through the quiet streets of Istanbul. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. Her heart pounded with fear, not of rejection, but of confronting what she had tried so hard to bury. She parked the car across the street from his building and sat there for almost 20 minutes. Then she stepped out. Every step to his door felt like a step toward either healing or heartbreak. She wasn't sure which. And once she got there, she didn't knock right away. She just stood. The wind rustled through the trees. A car passed in the distance. Somewhere, a streetlight buzzed overhead. But she didn't move. Finally, she knocked. Once. Softly. Then silence. Inside, Ken had already been awake. He had heard the knock. He had known, without even looking, that it was her. Because no one else knocked like that. With hesitation. With hope. With history. He approached the door slowly, his heartbeat thundering in his chest. He looked through the peephole. And there she was. Everything he had been avoiding. Everything he had lost. Everything he still loved. Just standing there. He didn't open the door. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know what would happen if he did. Would she cry? Would she scream? Would she ask him why he left? Why he said nothing? Why he let her walk away? He wasn't ready for answers. So he leaned against the wall. And stayed there. Minutes passed. Then hours. She didn't leave. Not immediately. She stayed, arms wrapped around herself, eyes occasionally glancing at the door, lips pressed into a tight line. She didn't knock again. She waited. Until waiting started to feel like begging. At 3:42 a.m. Demet finally turned and walked away. She didn't cry. She didn't call. She just walked back to her car, started the engine, and drove into the night. Can didn't sleep. He sat by the door until morning. And every second since then, he had replayed that night over and over again in his mind. What if he had opened it? What if he had said her name? Would they have healed? Or would they have broken all over again? Weeks later, during a rare interview in Rome, a journalist asked Can, "Have you ever lost someone you couldn't forget?" He hesitated. Smiled faintly. Then whispered, "She waited outside my door for hours. And I never opened it." That single line shook the internet. Demet stayed silent for days. Then she posted a photo of the sea. The caption said, "Some doors are never opened." No tags. No name. But the world knew. And 2 nights later, she confirmed it. "Yes. I was there," she said to a journalist at a charity gala. "And no, he never opened the door." What followed were weeks of speculation. And then, another revelation. Can, while browsing old files, found a voice message. One he never knew she left. He clicked play. "Can. I know this may sound ridiculous. Maybe I shouldn't have come. But I needed to feel close to something real again. To someone real. I wasn't expecting anything. I just didn't know where else to go." Her voice trembled. She paused. If you're listening to this, maybe you finally opened the door. Or maybe you didn't. Either way, I just wanted you to know, I didn't come to change your mind. I came because I never really left. Can closed the file. And cried. For the first time in years. Later that night, he wrote a letter. One he never sent. He wrote. "That night, I was right there. I saw you. I heard you. I felt everything. But I didn't move. Not because I didn't care. But because I cared too much. You were always more than I deserved. And I didn't want to break you again. But the truth is, I never stopped loving you. I never stopped remembering the way you looked at me when you thought no one was watching. I never stopped hearing your laugh in the silence of my mornings. I never stopped craving the comfort of your voice on the days when I couldn't even face my own reflection. I thought I was protecting you by staying silent. I thought that letting you walk away would set you free. But all I did was imprison us both in a memory that refuses to fade. There were so many nights I rehearsed what I'd say if I saw you again. So many versions of an apology. So many versions of a confession. But none of them ever felt right. Because what do you say to someone who was once your entire world, and still kind of is? I don't know if you still think about me. I don't know if you still ache the way I do. But if you ever wonder whether that night mattered, it did. It mattered more than you'll ever know. I'm not asking for anything. Not forgiveness. Not another chance. Just the chance to be honest. Finally. Because love like what we had, it doesn't vanish. It doesn't die. It lingers. It echoes. It hides in the pauses between one breath and the next. It exists in every what if that keeps me awake at night. It breathes between silence and memory. And sometimes, it waits, outside a door. In the cold. In the dark. In the hope that one day, maybe, that door will open.